Coffee is everywhere. It's in your kitchen, your office, your car cup holder, and probably already on your breath right now. Every day, more than 2 billion cups are poured across the planet, quietly fueling conversations, deadlines, friendships, and early mornings. Famous thinkers, artists, and philosophers built entire routines around it. One legendary writer was said to drink dozens of cups a day and still lived a long, productive life. That alone makes coffee feel almost magical. But here's the question no one really asks. What is coffee actually doing to you when you drink it? Not the comforting idea we tell ourselves, but the real effects inside your brain and body. Because behind that warm mug is a surprisingly complex chemical story that most people never learn. So before you take your next sip, pause for a second and think about this. When do you really drink your first cup? And why does it feel like you need it so badly? One of the most misunderstood things about coffee is how it interacts with your brain. Many people believe coffee gives them intelligence on demand, like flipping on a genius switch. The truth is more subtle, but still impressive. When caffeine enters your system, it stimulates your central nervous system by increasing neuronal activity. Your brain responds by releasing adrenaline, the same hormone involved in fight or flight. Your heart rate rises slightly, blood pressure increases, airways open, and sugar is released into your bloodstream. All of this happens quietly, without you noticing the chemistry behind it. The result is sharper attention, quicker reaction time, and improved focus, especially when combined with a small amount of glucose. That's why a sweetened coffee can temporarily feel like mental rocket fuel. But this effect is strongest in people who don't drink coffee constantly. Over time, the brain learns to expect caffeine, and the boost becomes less dramatic. Coffee still works, just not with the same punch it once had. That famous mid-afternoon crash most people experience has a lot to do with biology, not laziness. After lunch, your body naturally shifts toward a lower state of alertness as digestion ramps up. In cultures where short afternoon rests are normal, this dip is accepted. In most modern workplaces, it's ignored. Caffeine steps in as a substitute for rest by increasing wakefulness during this low-energy window. That's why coffee feels especially effective when you're jet-lagged or working irregular hours. But timing matters. Drinking coffee on an empty stomach can overstimulate stress hormones and leave you feeling shaky instead of focused. And if you rely on caffeine to replace sleep entirely, your brain will eventually push back. Coffee helps with alertness, but it can't rewrite your biology forever. Another fact most people don't realize is how coffee affects blood pressure differently depending on the person. For some, caffeine causes a temporary spike in blood pressure, especially if they're sensitive to stimulants or don't drink coffee often. That's why doctors often recommend avoiding coffee before a blood pressure test. You might accidentally get a reading that looks worse than your baseline. But here's the twist. For people with naturally low blood pressure, a modest amount of coffee can actually help improve circulation and reduce lightheadedness. The same chemical reaction that causes concern for one person can be helpful for another. Coffee isn't automatically harmful or beneficial in this case. It simply amplifies what's already there. Your baseline matters more than the beverage itself. Coffee's relationship with your immune system is one of its most surprising features. While most people think of coffee purely as a stimulant, it's also loaded with antioxidants and biologically active compounds. These compounds help reduce inflammation and support cellular repair. Large population studies have found that moderate coffee consumption is associated with lower risk of certain chronic diseases and even reduced risk of premature death. Coffee appears to support liver health, cardiovascular function, and digestive processes. It also contains phenolic compounds that play a role in cancer prevention. Interestingly, research has shown a consistent association between caffeine intake and a reduced risk of developing Parkinson's disease. While coffee isn't a cure, its protective effects are strong enough to catch the attention of scientists worldwide. However, not all coffee is created equal. Freshly ground coffee retains more of these beneficial compounds than heavily processed instant varieties, which often lose nutrients during manufacturing. Headaches are another area where coffee plays a double role. Caffeine is commonly added to pain relievers because it enhances their effectiveness by improving blood flow and speeding absorption. For many people, a small cup of coffee can reduce headache intensity or shorten a migraine. But there's a hidden downside. When your body becomes accustomed to daily caffeine, skipping it can trigger withdrawal headaches. In that case, coffee feels like the cure when it's also part of the problem. The headache disappears when you drink coffee, reinforcing the habit. Moderation breaks this cycle. When caffeine isn't constantly expected, its pain-relieving effects become more reliable and less demanding. Stress and coffee have a complicated relationship that depends heavily on the individual. For some people, coffee is comfort. The smell alone signals routine, familiarity, and calm. A warm cup can slow the mind and create a sense of control at the start of a busy day. But caffeine is still a stimulant. In sensitive individuals, too much can increase anxiety, nervous energy, and racing thoughts. What feels motivating for one person may feel overwhelming for another. This explains why two people can drink the same coffee and have opposite reactions. Coffee doesn't automatically reduce stress or cause it. It amplifies the state your nervous system is already in. Memory is another area where coffee quietly shines. Caffeine improves alertness, reaction time, and short-term memory by enhancing communication between neurons. This effect is especially useful during learning because information first passes through short-term memory before it has a chance to become long-term memory. When focus improves, retention improves. Coffee doesn't permanently expand your memory capacity, but it can make the process of learning more efficient in the moment. That's why coffee breaks often feel mentally refreshing rather than just physically stimulating. They interrupt mental fatigue and help your brain re-engage with information more effectively. Weight control is one of the most misunderstood topics when it comes to coffee. Plain coffee contains almost no calories and can temporarily reduce appetite. Caffeine also increases metabolic rate slightly and can make physical activity feel easier. This combination can support weight management when coffee replaces sugary beverages. But the benefit disappears fast when coffee turns into dessert. Syrups, whipped cream, sweetened milk, and flavored additives can turn a zero-calorie drink into a calorie bomb. At that point, coffee isn't helping weight goals anymore. It's quietly working against them. Coffee helps most when it stays simple. One of the biggest myths about coffee is that it gives you energy. It doesn't. Your body creates energy through metabolism, not caffeine. What coffee actually does is block adenosine, a chemical that signals tiredness in your brain. When adenosine is blocked, you feel more awake even though your energy reserves haven't changed. This is why coffee can make you feel functional after little sleep, but it can't replace rest. The fatigue is still there, just temporarily hidden. When caffeine wears off, tiredness often returns stronger, especially if sleep debt has accumulated. Over time, your brain adapts to this process. If you drink coffee regularly, your brain responds by creating more adenosine receptors. This makes caffeine less effective. The same cup that once felt powerful starts to feel normal. This isn't addiction in the classic sense. It's adaptation. Your brain is simply trying to maintain balance. This is also why coffee affects people so differently. Genetics, tolerance, and daily habits all shape the response. Coffee isn't considered highly addictive, but your body can become accustomed to it. When caffeine is removed suddenly, mild withdrawal symptoms like headaches, fatigue, and difficulty concentrating can appear. The good news is that these symptoms are temporary. They usually fade within a few days as your brain recalibrates. Coffee doesn't trap you, but it does create expectations if consumed daily. The biggest misunderstanding about coffee comes down to one idea. People believe coffee creates energy. In reality, it delays tiredness. It borrows alertness from the future. This is where timing becomes crucial. Drinking coffee late in the day doesn't eliminate fatigue. It pushes it forward. Sleep quality suffers, and the next day begins with even more dependence on caffeine. Used early, coffee supports natural energy rhythms. Used late, it fights them. Before finishing, there are a few overlooked tips that can dramatically improve your coffee experience. Always check the roast date, not just the expiration date. Coffee loses aroma and flavor over time, even if it's technically still good. Fresher beans almost always taste better. Water temperature matters too. Pouring boiling water directly onto coffee can extract bitter compounds. Letting the water cool slightly before brewing creates a smoother cup. Grind size often affects flavor more than brand. Small adjustments can transform taste without changing beans. And finally, take one sip before adding anything. You don't have to drink it black, but tasting it first helps you notice flavors you might otherwise miss. Coffee isn't bad, and it isn't magic. It's a tool. Used wisely, it supports focus, mood, and performance. Used carelessly, it hides fatigue and disrupts sleep. Once you understand what coffee actually does, you don't need more of it. You just need to use it smarter. So tell me, what time do you usually drink your last cup of coffee each day? Let me know in the comments.